All right, welcome back to another episode of the Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line podcast. I'm your host, Monica Crawford, owner of 50 Fierce and Fit and author of Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line, which is the book that the podcast is based off of. And we're diving into those three credos that I use throughout my book as I bring on different podcast guests. Today I'm excited because I have something way out of our normal wheelhouse, which is great. I've been waiting to bring these types of people on to give us more information on other fields that are not just specific to law enforcement, first responders, or even women in male-driven fields. It's stuff that's going to help everybody and whoever wants to listen and become more of a leader and take control in their own lives. Today we have John, and John, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you so you can give a quick intro.
Well, first of all, Monica, thank you for the invitation. Love your show, love what you're doing, and thank you for all your years in law enforcement as well and out protecting the public. But yeah, my name is John Solleder. I live in Dallas. I am a serial entrepreneur. Matter of fact, ironically, I don't know when you're going to air this, Monica, but tomorrow, April 18th, will be 42 years since I started my first business venture. Long time ago in New Jersey, many, many moons ago. But I've been self-employed my whole life. And you figure out a lot of stuff, not only about business over 42 years, but you figure out a lot about yourself. You figure out a lot of things when the economy goes against you, which it does. And it has to, for some people here the last little while. Um, in good times, it's easy to make money. In tough times, you kind of cuts the wheat from the shaft, so to speak. So I figured out a lot of stuff in 42 years. I've written 4 books on the direct selling industry. I've written another 7 books that I haven't published yet. I will be on my website, johnsolleder.com, just little ebooks for people to understand some financial principles, because I have a background not only in direct selling, but also in finance in the insurance business. So I wrote some very short books on things like final expense insurance, SEP retirement plans, that sort of thing, really for entrepreneurs, because you can't understand all of this stuff. You know what I mean? And we're inundated with so much information, over information almost. So it's like, let's simplify it. Let's read about a subject at a time, learn what we can, see whether it fits our needs, and go from there. So that's kind of what I do, and I'm a podcaster like yourself. Got my own podcast under my name, John_Solleder, and you can find that on YouTube and on Rumble. We're not on Rumble in a big way, but we're on YouTube in a big way. So that's kind of who I am. I live in Dallas. Got 3 adult kids, 4 dogs, 4 cats. So I
There,
stay.
there you go. I like the critter clan. I mean, we were just talking about my dogs. I got three dogs, a cat, a rabbit, and a horse. So it's also I call it a mini circus or mini farm, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Well, the dogs are beautiful.
Thanks. Cool. Well, this is awesome. 42 years in business. That's incredible. I've been in for three, so I've got a lot to learn. Good deal. Cool. Well, I'm glad to be learning from you today and my listeners as well. I'm sure they'll definitely take lots from this, especially in the financial realm of things. I feel like especially in law enforcement, we get really narrow-minded when it comes to pensions and retirements and things like that and don't realize there's a whole other financial world out there that we could be dipping into.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Hey,
hopefully we'll get into that.
sure.
All right. So the way I start my podcast with everyone, and this will apply to you as well, is what does it mean to you to thrive inside the thin blue line, which for you means in your own life and career. So for you, maybe perhaps I almost said insurance, but I meant entrepreneurship and beyond.
What does it mean to thrive? Well, I look at it this way. To thrive means to live, and every day I want to live. I'll be 64 next month, and I'm still at the gym pretty much 6 days a week. First thing in the morning, get up early. I get up early and I get after it because I've found over the years that successful people get up early. They go to bed early, they get up early. You can't burn the candle at both ends, especially if you want to be successful in business, because you need your focus and attention, and frankly, you need your rest. But you need to be physically fit, first of all. You need to take care of your body. So I do everything. I still am a competitive power lifter. I actually have a meet on Saturday. Old guys division. Okay. But still doing that. Still throw shot and disc a little bit. Earlier in life was judo, wrestling, jujitsu, and sambo. So I've been a career athlete, beat my body up pretty good. But at the end of the day, I find that resistance training as I get older is the most important thing that I can do for my body. It's actually more important to train now than it was when I was a competitive, real competitive athlete. Powerlifting, I lay on a bench, I push the weight up, or sometimes I don't push the weight up. Hopefully Saturday I'll push the weight up. But that's one thing. And then in addition to that, I find that everything is related. Hippocrates said that, our brain is our second stomach. So I find that, you have to eat correctly, lots of fruits, lots of vegetables in my case. Okay. Really adopted a very plant-based diet here the last number of years. But then that's how I thrive. I have friends that are my age that are retired or retiring. I see them on Facebook and they're like little old men. And it's like, I've still got all these goals and dreams and ambitions. I'm going to Costa Rica next week, for example, for the first time. My wife and I are going down there, actually to go to a fruit festival, believe it or not, on the beach. I've still got goals to go to Peru and do some exploring there. I've got all these goals, dreams, and ambitions still. And I think that's how you thrive is what's next? What's next? What's next? And in business, what's next is what you start to plan on. You got to be a good planner. For example, I do a lot of online events. I started these during COVID, and I just did one this past Saturday where I use AI as the featured thing, but I incorporate other things because AI is a great subject, huge subject, but at the end of the day, it's not the only subject people are talking about. So, for example, when I do an online event, which my next one is June 28th, what I do with those is I basically incorporate a lot of different themes. For example, this last one we talked about glutathione, we talked about red light therapy, we talked about exercise physiology, we talked about AI, of course, in like a 2.5 hour session, we gave people a ton of content, and we only had about 114 people on that call. Only one person who I knew had a wedding disconnected. So that tells you that you're in the right wheelhouse. You're touching enough bases that people say, okay, great, that subject's done. Let me listen to this subject, so to speak. And then the other thing I'm involved with, by the way, is with podcasting. I'm helping to put on podcast summits. The first one's going to be in Las Vegas in July, where we're getting 60 podcasters into a Top Golf type of facility to interview 3 to 5 thousand people that are coming through to that event that we'll be interviewing. And if you like, I'll get you the information on that, Monica. And then we're going to do another one at Texas Tech University in August. And then we're talking to people in both Chicago and Dallas about doing one in Chicago and Dallas sometime in the fall. So I'm thriving because I'm too busy not to thrive. Like I got a full day every day.
Yeah, that's incredible. I didn't even realize you're in Dallas. I'm in Tulsa, so we're not too far.
Yeah,
I've made several trips down to the Dallas Metroplex area because I've got some connections down there with Dallas police.
love Tulsa. Beautiful city. Beautiful city.
Yeah. I love this. I love when I find people who are active in their later years. Because you don't see that. And you're right. It's like I could look at somebody who's your same age and they look like they're 80. And it's just because of their lifestyle and how it's been. One of the cool things I got to do last year was I'm in the CrossFit space and I was a team lead judge for the Masters CrossFit Games.
Okay.
And so they have everybody there from age 35 to like 80, 75 or 80 plus, I think is their oldest age division. And there's a female that goes out there in like the 75 plus age division and like front squats my current max. And I'm like, what? What is happening? Like, this is so cool. Like, that's the most inspiring thing I can think of like, if I can do that when I'm her age, like goals. Like, I have done what I've needed to do.
Well, you know what? And you're making a great point because if I compare myself to most 64-year-old men, I'm doing great. But I joined a over 60 men's and women's group on Facebook. And some of these people are cut. They got six packs, and I mean they're ripped. And now they're body. A lot of them are bodybuilders. I'm not a bodybuilder, but at the end of the day, some of them aren't. Some of them are just seriously fit. They're serious about their nutrition. They're serious about their rest because that is an important part, especially as you get older. Obviously, their rehydration. They're doing the right things, and they don't look like 60-plus-year-old people. If you look at some of these people and you're like, wow. So that's what I'm comparing myself to is like, okay, I want to be like them. I don't necessarily have to look like them, but I can certainly want to be like them. There's no reason not to be strong as you get older. Right now, there's 8 guys in America in the world that have benched over 1,000 pounds. I'm not one of them, but one is in his 60s. There's another guy in his 60s who probably could. He's getting close to it. He just doesn't have a lot of time to compete. And of course they're using bench shirts, which you're familiar with. Obviously, your listeners may or may not be, but it's a tool of the trade, so to speak. So I'm seeing some crazy weights lifted by some older people that shouldn't be lifting those kind of weights in theory, but they are, right? And there's probably people doing marathons that are doing crazy times. And I know in track and field, I go to some track meets every year to throw, and I just do that for fun. I'm not a great thrower, but one of the guys I throw with, he's 64. He's still throwing 180 feet in a discus. It's like he throws it. It's like, where did it go? It looks like a golf shot, right? How far he throws this darn thing. So the point is, you can still do it. Okay, find something to do. This is also my mantra. I tell people this all the time. Whatever your thing is, right? Find it and do it and enjoy doing it. Like if you hate doing it, find something else, right? And if you've been an athlete, like probably a lot of your listeners, are or have been, right? And you enjoyed playing basketball when you were young, but you don't like playing basketball anymore. Try volleyball, right? Try pickleball. Try something else, but find something that you are passionate enough about that you feel like showing up for at least 3 times a week and doing it for 45 minutes to an hour, with other people possibly, or if it's a soul, if you're running, for example, it's a soul type of thing, or bike riding, but do something. There's no reason to age sitting in a chair watching other people on TV and yelling at them. I never get how guys can sit for they'll watch the early game, then they'll watch the 4 o'clock game or the 3 o'clock game, then they'll watch the night game, then they'll watch Monday Night Football, and they'll spend like 15 hours sitting in a chair yelling at grown men on a TV that can't hear them that are making a lot of money. I get why those guys are doing it. I don't get why you're not doing something on your end. I'm not saying don't enjoy it. I follow football. But at the end of the day, don't spend your entire weekend watching other people do something. Find something you like to do and just do it. And if you want to be a master's athlete, just about every sport has a master's division in 5-year increments that you can participate in. You don't have to be at the top of the class. I was a really good judo player. I'm a really bad power lifter. Okay. By the way, I did have a world record though that I set in Tulsa, of all places.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Terry, I don't know if you know Terry Putnam by any chance?
I don't.
Okay, Terry runs powerlifting in the Tulsa area for a couple of federations, but I did it at his meet a few years ago. But to that point, I'm to the point now where I got some shoulder issues, just lifting for fun because I want to be with the guys. I want to have the group grab butt type of thing for a few hours on Saturday. I'll get on the bench. I'll lift 3 times. I'll get a medal that I'll probably lose. I don't do it for any of that. I do it because I want to participate, but it also forces me to go to the gym and do something with an end in mind versus just showing up and go, what am I going to do today? It gives me a strategy and tactics to do when I train, and that'll carry over to any sport that you participate in. And if you don't want to participate, just train like you do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's a good reminder. That's a lot of things I think I've really picked up on too, as far as people who are highly driven tend to burn out really quickly. And it's because they get so narrow-minded in what they're doing as far as their career is that they forget about their hobbies and things outside of that career to create that balance, or even just developing skills outside of what your main thing is so that you have that outlet. Like you said, finding hobbies. The way I interpret that, I've always said, do what you love. Like I've always said that my whole life of just do what you love, because if you can find that and do that, then your life is more enjoyable than going to a job or doing a thing that you hate just to collect a paycheck.
Exactly, exactly. And I just look at everything and even business. Podcasting is something, for example, I started during COVID because I had written 4 books at that time, and 2 were published in really bad timing. December 2019, January 2020, and 2 separate books. A lot of investment, by the way, about $40,000 to publish 2 books at the same time. And I was supposed to be on a 60 city speaking tour with the network marketing company I represent, which would have put me in front of thousands of people that, you don't bring the books to all of them. You bring a handful and you sign a few and you tell everybody else, go to Amazon. Well, I lost the ability to do that because of COVID. Nothing I did wrong. It was just, COVID happened. And it was like, okay, as when we're in business, any business, there's 2 words that are really important. Learn how to pivot and learn how to be agile. And what does that really mean? It means I had to pivot, for example, and go, okay, I don't have the ability to sell these books the way I traditionally had my previous books. So I had to pivot and go, what can I do? Oh, I can do a podcast. So I can get the book out there. I can talk to my audience. I can get people to, watch podcasts. Okay. But I had to be agile in the sense that, okay, I need to move some things around in my business. Okay. For example, with my network marketing business that I'm the top distributor in for 28 years and everything else, I had to figure out what am I going to do with that? Because the books weren't going to pay my bills. My business paid my bills. And I'm like, okay, once again, I've lost the ability now to communicate with my audience. What do I do with these people? So what did we do? Well, we went to Zoom and we created a thing called the Zoom-tacular, believe it or not, which became an online event. And I started bringing people. I even brought a disc jockey in at one point. A friend of mine from Baltimore who's a disc jockey he had all his equipment at home because he was not out doing his thing, obviously. The clubs were all closed. And I said to him, I said, hey, Lou, why don't we do this? First 15 minutes of these shows, and we did them on Saturdays, but we did them in the afternoon on purpose, right? With the idea that, what are people normally doing on Saturday, right? If you're married or even if you're single, you got a date, you're going out on Saturday night, right? Most people, all age groups, are doing something on Saturday evening. So I said, let's do it and let's do a little bit of music when we start and then we'll get into the content. But then at the end, why don't you just stay on and let people dance in their houses with their spouse? And and I'm not exaggerating, Monica. I came back one show. I had to go to the bathroom. It was like 3 hours I'm on this show. I was like, okay, nature call. I go to the bathroom. I come back. I still got my screen up. I meant to disconnect. We had 60 couples in their living rooms dancing. And I was like, wow, this was a very agile thing that we did. We pivoted to the call, but we created something that beyond whatever business we did or didn't get out of that, we made people feel good. So we became very agile in our business. So every call that we had during that time period, we had more and more attendance on because people were telling their friends, hey, this is like a big party these guys are throwing online. Oh yeah, we're not going to talk about glutathione and they're going to talk about business and they're going to talk about all that stuff. But hey, even if you don't like any of that, come because it's fun. Well, that's kind of how we have to think in business sometimes, but with whatever's happening, right? Whatever, whoever the president is, whatever the economy is, we got to be able to pivot and be able to be agile at the same time.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a great idea. Especially during COVID, everybody's bummed out because they can't go out and you're just like, hey, we're gonna bring the party here.
Exactly.
And literally and make
Exactly.
the party happen and give people something fun to do and reconnect and creating their own fun essentially when it was a time when it was you either at home or you're standing outside staring at the sky going, what do we do? Or fighting people in Walmart for eggs. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the other thing
Paper.
was it was a great distraction because everybody was worried about what was going on with COVID. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, you know what? At least for a couple of hours, they had something else to focus on, something else to think about, something else to learn about. But we didn't want to make it so heavy because the world was so heavy at that time. It was like, hey, you normally would be going out Saturday night to do something. Okay, dance with your wife or your husband in your living room. Okay, even if it's for a half hour and have a little fun. And they forgot about all the other stuff that was going on, which was, incredibly difficult for everybody at that time. So yeah, but that translates to now, I'm constantly pivoting in business Not every day, but I constantly am pivoting to do things within my business after 42 years that I didn't know I would ever have to do. And the other thing is when I talk about agility, don't be afraid to learn. Like AI is a big scary subject right now. Everybody's scared of AI, right? Because it is going to replace jobs. It is replacing jobs, okay, in some sectors. So what do you do? How do you use it? Well, I'll give you an example. I put it to work for me. When I put those 7 little booklets together, I went to a company online, an AI company. I used their resource, cost me a whopping $27, okay, to put together these 7 booklets. Now, I had to do the content in terms of what I wanted, in terms of the chapter arrangement, but it was kind of like I picked the chapter, AI goes does the research, then I approve each chapter. It took me no time. So it saved me a bunch of time, which allowed me to do what? Continue to build my business, talk to people to do what I could do that AI can't do. And that's how we have to see AI. What is it in your particular business that you do so well that people are willing to pay you for that only you can do? And then use AI to do all the other minutia that otherwise takes your time. This way, what you do best, you're going to find your production is going to go up as a result of that, as opposed to down. And that's every business, by the way. Every business that that has an AI utilization.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I just had a talk with one of my business coaches of the same thing of how to leverage that and use that. So I just started. The only thing I've dabbled with is Chat GPT, but starting to dabble with some of that and make it, and it's quite insightful once it works for you and it kicks something back to you and you're like, oh, this works and it actually kind of sounds like me and I only have to change a couple words or sentences here and there to put it in my with my little whatever flair to it and kick it out to the world and it works. It works in most cases, which I was shocked to see because I expected it to be very robotic and it was less robotic than what I had thought it would be.
My son got me watching this show. And I always forget the name of it. I want to call it Oswald, but it's not Oswald, but it's Orville, the Orville. It's like a kind of a space track type of thing that was done a few years ago, and there's a robot on it who's like, this super bright guy. His name's Isaac. And I think of that as my AI guy. I'm like, well, I got Isaac working for me, right? Where he's got no emotion. But here's what's cool about Isaac. Isaac shows up for work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doesn't sue the company, doesn't call me and say, I got to pick my kid up at school or, I need a couple days off. It's like Isaac works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, Easter. He shows up for work. And that's how we have to see AI. So especially for those of us that are, have some gray hair, don't let this stuff scare you. Okay. This is a different world than we grew up in. I started my business, my telephone was plugged into the wall. Today, I got a cell phone here with apps on it and WhatsApp, and I deal with people in Europe and Asia and South America and all over the world on this thing. I didn't 42 years ago, I couldn't have even envisioned this thing, right? But what happened, right? BlackBerry came along and invented it. Steve Jobs took it and put it to another level, and we've all benefited. So most of these things we benefit from over the course of time. Don't let them scare you. By the way, about half the stuff on this phone, I have no idea why it's even there. But the stuff that's there that I know I need for my business, I know how to use. Okay. And that's how you use AI. Just don't let it scare you. Make it your friend. Okay. You don't have to become an expert. I'm certainly not. Plenty of other people are, but there's plenty of ways to use it in your business to once again let it do what you can't do. And let me give you another fast example of that and how I think, Monica. When I lived in New York many years ago, I actually used to enjoy cutting my lawn because a lot of time during the week I was traveling doing meetings. So it was kind of like, hey, let me get out in nature, cut my lawn, and I didn't have a big lawn, but it took me about an hour to cut it. And my mentor said to me one day, he said, I don't understand why you're cutting your own lawn. And I said, well, what I just said, I kind of enjoy it. I'm outside. He goes, but you work out all the time. He's like, you don't need the extra exercise. And he said, what do you make per day? And at the time I was making about $1,000 a day. So he said, take 8 hours out for sleep, take another 8 hours out for recreation, all the other stuff you do. So you're really working about 8 hours a day. What is that an hour? I said, I think that's about $125 an hour. Okay. So if I make $125 an hour, he said, what would you pay a landscaper? I said, well, back then about $40 an hour. He says, and in that hour, do you think you could be more productive to make more than $125? I said, oh, of course I could. And it got my thinking right. Now, that's a long time ago, but that's how I see AI now. Let the AI thing do all the stuff that I either don't want to do, can't do. Let it do my research. I'm still going to check it. Okay. I want to make sure it's saying what I agree with, right? It's not saying something, politically incorrect or radical. Okay. That it's consistent with my values. But at the end of the day, let it do the heavy lifting. So you do what you can only do. Like in your case, okay, training people. Well, you can't offset load that to a robot. But if you had a client come to you that said, "Hey, Monica, you know what? I'm a track athlete. I'm a thrower." Hmm. Well, you could spend hours and hours and hours going through books and putting together a training regime that would be consistent for a thrower. Or you can go to AI and go, "Give me 3 throwing workouts for a 40-year-old thrower, a 60-year-old thrower, or a 20-year-old thrower," and it would give you data. Once again, then you'd analyze the data and say, "Okay, this workout here is pretty good for this guy. Let me modify it because he's got a bad back or he's got a whatever," right? You'd make those adjustments as the professional training that individual. But AI did the heavy lifting of all those hours that you could then spend training people, building your podcast, building your brand, doing the other things you want to do with your life, hanging out with your dogs and your horse and your cat. And what did I miss? You have a goat too, you said?
The rabbit.
A rabbit. A rabbit. Don't forget the
Both
rabbit.
yet. Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely, that makes sense. That's a big thing of getting your time back, paying other people to get your time back. And the way I see it too, even with people who have 9 to 5s or a standard W-2 position, it's reducing your stress load. Even if you could pay somebody to take some stress off of you, like what does that give you back? Maybe your return on investment is your time with your family versus focusing on your income or making it dollar cents. It's still a return on investment, but it's going to help you live a healthier, longer life, in essence, if you could pay somebody to do something that's stressing you out, that you feel like
Exactly.
you don't have time for instead of running yourself thin.
Exactly. Exactly. And I guess there's just a couple of things on business for your people that are either looking to be in business or they've started a business. When I started, I'll tell you this real as fast as I can because it's a long story, but I'm going to compress it for you. So April 18th, 1983, I get introduced to a network marketing business from a guy I wrestled with in high school. And I wrote him a $32 hot check. I shouldn't tell a police officer that.
It was a
But
long time ago. It's past my purview.
well, it wasn't really hot. I told him to hold it. It was really a hold check. And he was nice enough to hold it because I didn't have $32. That's where I was at in 1983. But I was about to graduate college, so I was working in a health club selling health club memberships, and I joined that business. And he told me a couple things to do. And by May of 18th of 1983, 1 month later, Ronald Reagan was the commencement speaker at my college graduation. And Reagan got up, and by the way, at the time, I was an avowed leftist. I was like a socialist. Okay, my family was very involved with trade unions and everything else back in New Jersey, and my politics were very, very left of left. I mean, I made AOC look conservative. Let's put it that way. And so I said to my father, I said, "I'm not even going to go." I said, "They can just mail me my degree." I said, and my father, who was not a Reagan guy, said, "Well, you should go because you did the work and you owe the money, by the way, for your education." I had school loans, and I said, "Well, I'm going to go, but I'm not going to listen. I'm going to do one of these deals. I'm going to close myself up when he talks. I'm just going to." And Reagan got up there, and he had this amazing ability, Monica, to talk just like you and I are right now, where you felt like he was talking to you. There's 4,000 people there. There's Secret Service, there's cops, there's parents, grandparents, kids, obviously, faculty. Reagan gets up and he talks about two things that have stayed with me for 42 years. Number one, the fact that capitalism, not perfect, but capitalism frees people. And he used an example of the East German people at the time who wanted what the West German people already had. Okay. Simple things like clothing choices. In East Germany, black or brown. West Germany, you want a shirt like this, or a shirt like you're wearing, or a red shirt, or a blue shirt, or a pink shirt? You had the choice. Consumer choices. Now that applies to everything, not just clothing, obviously, right? that's what those folks wanted. And I said, well, that kind of makes sense. I get that. That's a human need. You know what I mean? You want variety. But then he really hit a home run because he talked about the fact that way back in 1932, when he was a broke college kid too, he went back to become a lifeguard in Illinois. And he met a man who was very successful in business. And he said, I'm going to ask him, how do you become successful? And the man said to him, well, it's real simple. They used to call Reagan Dutch in those days. And they said, hey, Dutch, here's what you do. You find a mentor. You find somebody who can teach you a business that you are passionate about. Huh, okay. Well, fast forward for Reagan. He liked broadcasting. He liked to talk. He becomes a broadcaster for a minor league affiliate of the Chicago Cubs. Somebody hears him one day and said from Westinghouse Corporation, they said, this guy could do voiceovers. They moved him to California. One thing leads to another, actor, governor, eventually president. So Ronald Reagan is kind of who really got me in my own business because I'm still looking for a job at that point, but I had started this little business that I had made $800 the first month. Now, 1983, people didn't use credit cards. Most people didn't even, I don't even think people had them. I think they existed, but it was like only the super rich had them. I think they're like Amex that existed. Anyway, so when people paid you, they paid you cash. So when I say I have made $800, I had $800 in my hip pocket, okay, which today would be about 2,500 bucks. So Reagan's talking, and I said, what he's doing is resonating. By the way, I went from like this to like the front of my chair, and when he was done speaking, I was the first one up, and I waited online for an hour and a half to shake his hand because that guy changed my life that day. Fast forward another roughly 30 days, I go to my first ever business meeting in Hartford, Connecticut. And the guy doing the meeting, still alive. He's 80 years old, lives in Dallas here also. A guy named Larry Thompson says the following. He says, for things to change, you have to change. And for things to get better, you have to get better. And it was like somebody just slapped me across the face. It was like, I'm thinking the president needs to change, the Congress needs to change, my parents need to change. I was born on the wrong side of the tracks, all the excuses. And when that guy said that in conjunction with what Reagan had said, was when I made a commitment to myself to become the brand. That I was going to work on me. I was going to work on my self-development. I started to read voraciously everything from Think and Grow Rich to As a Man Thinketh by James Allen to The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And I started to just inundate my brain with all of this information and knowledge and positivity to change how I thought. And when I changed how I thought, it changed how I acted. And I started to attract the right people to my business. And that's really been the secret of my success has been that I've attracted so many great people to my businesses over the years that have helped me to grow and help themselves, by the way. They didn't do it for me, they did it for themselves. But you become a conduit of people who want the same things, okay, that have the right attitude. And that was the big thing for me was recognizing that first company I was with, I didn't even stay with very long. But then I started to get the mentorship. It took me 6 years to make my first $1 million. Okay. And that was an accumulation of 6 years of work, by the way. I didn't make $1 million in a year, but I made that over that time period, which was my first big goal. When I wrote down my goals and stuck them in my wallet way back in 1983, the first one was by 30, I wanted to be a millionaire on paper, at least for the very first time. And I was. And that's kind of how I started. And that's still the way I think, 42 years later, it's still the stuff I'm teaching people and mentoring people and telling people is, look, we live in a great world. There's so many opportunities. There's so many things you can market and sell and create. Just pick one. Pick one and go and be focused and have the right attitude. And try not to get distracted because the world also can be very distracting. You could sit for hours, like I said, and watch 15 hours of football on Saturday afternoon, 15 hours on Sunday afternoon, 4 hours on Monday night, plus Thursday night. That's if you're a football person. And if you're a basketball person or baseball, it's even worse. And even if you're not, if you're a Netflix junkie and you're spending 3 hours a night watching your favorite series, cut it down to an hour. Take those other couple hours and invest in you. Ben Franklin was one of the smartest men ever lived, by the way. I've done a lot of research on Franklin. And Franklin had a great statement, Monica, which was take the coins of your purse and fill your brain, and your brain will refill your purse many times over. What was he saying? He was saying, even back then, invest in you, invest in self-development, invest in your education, and invest in your business, okay? and the money will eventually always come back to you, probably tenfold. Very, very good principle. So, all this stuff is there, all this information's there. You just have to, go find it. Okay. And then more importantly, okay, don't, take it and apply it to whatever it is that you're passionate about. Like that guy told Reagan, find that thing. If it's personal training, if it's network marketing, if it's life insurance, if it's real estate, if it's automobile sales, if it's, building your local bakery, dog grooming. I'm looking at your beautiful dog there. He is a beautiful dog, by the way. You can tell I'm a dog guy. Whatever it is, be the best at it. Drive yourself to be the best at it by saying, hey, the brand is me. Whatever it is I'm selling happens to be the vehicle, but the brand at the end of the day is me.
Yeah. I'm glad you went into somewhat of that origin story because that was about to be my next thing is how this whole venture got started with you in your life. So I think you touched well on that. That's incredible. That's a great illustration of being closed off and then one event pretty much changing your life, essentially. That's one of the credos inside of this podcast in my book is you're one decision away from a totally different life. And I think that sounds like that's manifested in your life in many different decisions. Yes?
Big time, big time. Yeah, big time. And the other thing is be open to opportunity. You can't do them all. You got to focus. Right? There's so many opportunities out there today, right? And you got to focus on one, two, or three that you can really do and manage. And another little bit of advice I give people is to be a finisher. And what does that mean? Don't start 10 things. You're never going to finish 10 things. Probably in a lifetime, you're not going to finish 10 things. 10 worthy things anyway. Pick one, two, or three. But if you've never done one, pick one, whatever that is, and then master it and work at it and study it and read every single day. Listen to podcasts like yours or mine. Okay. There's so much knowledge out there for free. See, that's the other amazing thing to me, Monica, is my book collection is probably $50,000 in books I've bought over the last 42 years. I'm still buying books, by the way. I still like to read a hard copy personally. And maybe that's just being an old guy, but I got a Kindle too. But my point about that is a lot of these great authors, they're talking on podcasts for free. Go listen to them. And you don't need to adopt every single thing that they do. It's one idea. That's what I always learn from people too. It's one idea. I met Tom Hopkins. Tom Hopkins, if people aren't familiar with Tom, he's kind of getting up there in years. But Tom was a real estate guru in Phoenix, Arizona, and he started a sales training company called Tom Hopkins International, I think it was. And I met Tom once in my life. And what did I learn from Tom? Well, real simple. He said, "What is the biggest thing that you have a problem with, John?" I said, "Well, believe it or not, I'm afraid to talk to people sometimes." He took out his business card. He wrote on the back of it, "Do what you fear most." And I stuck that in my wallet. And every time I got a little bit hesitant to talk to people about my business or my product, all of a sudden I looked at that and I said, okay, I got to do what Tom said, do what I fear most. I met the great Jim Rohn several times, but I had lunch with Jim here in Dallas once. And here's another secret to success in business. We're having lunch, and it's a long story, so I'll tell it fast. But anyway, we get to the end of lunch, and we're with two other guys, including one guy who used to work for Jim. And we get to the end of lunch, and Jim looks at the three of us, and he looks over at me, and the two other guys were in their 50s. I was in my 30s at the time. He said, "I can't really help these two guys, John." He actually referred to you by your last name, by the way. You were always Mr. Solleder. Okay, you'd always be Mr. or Mrs. or Miss to him. Not sure why he did that, but he always said, "Mr. Solleder, I can't really help these two other guys, but I can help you still." And I knew what he meant. Go get your day timer and take notes. So I run out to my car, I run back in, sit back down, and he says, "Listen, it's not so much that I'm going to say something that's all that game changing. You hear me talk all the time." He says, "But what if this waiter comes over and he says something so profound that it would change your business?" And he says it fast, and then he's off to the next table, and we're back to our lunch, and then we all depart. And you get home tonight and you say, "What did that waiter say?" Because what he said was really important. You go back the next day, the waiter quit. The maitre d' says we have no information for him, or we won't give you the information. It's private,
Hmm.
and you never meet the guy again. He says, but if you wrote down what the guy said, it's yours. It was like another lesson of life. Well, he's the guy that taught Tony Robbins not maybe not everything Tony Robbins knows. He's certainly learned some things over the years on his own, but early on, Tony Robbins worked for Jim Rohn. So there's always these relationships. You look at successful people, they always had a mentor. In Tony's case, it was Jim. In my case, it was Larry and Jim Rohn. In other people's cases, it was other people. But there's always somebody out there. Reagan's case, it was whoever mentored him in the broadcast business, right? So there's always somebody to teach you. But my other point today is a lot of the stuff you can just get with people that you're never going to meet, but you can get their ideas, you can get their strategies, you can get their tactics, you can get their wisdom all from listening to podcasts, for example.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm working with a copywriting coach currently, and that was one of the things that she brought to my attention was there's some statistic out there that says that you'll spend more time listening to a podcast than in a conversation with your significant other right now, which makes sense because everybody walks around with like one earbud in doing earbud, whatever, a headphone in their ear doing something, and it actually gets to the point where I get annoyed by it when my husband does it. I was like, what are you focusing on at the moment? I feel like your attention is diverted at the moment. But everybody does it, so everybody's listening to something all the time. So it might as well be something that's gonna make you better.
Exactly. Exactly.
Cool. Well, you dipped into relationships and somewhat of that relationship capital as far as is how others can help mentor you or you become a mentor to someone else. One of the other credos of this podcast in my book is we rise by lifting others, but first we must lift ourselves. So when I say that, what does that mean to you?
Well, you know what? It means that you have to be the best version of yourself. You have to be the best brand of yourself. Okay. And that means you always have to work on yourself, everything from your self-development to your fitness, to your nutrition, to your thoughts, to your ideas, to your attitude. Like the word attitude, for example, is an interesting word. If you take it phonetically and you said, the A is a one in the alphabet, right? The T is a 20, the other T is a 20, and you add it all up, it adds up to 100%.
Interesting.
So how important is our attitude? If somebody has a bad attitude, wow, that's really hard to fix. But if somebody has a great attitude, they'll figure out the rest. I've seen people, for example, that I've coached that have come from other countries where English is a second language, and they achieve great things. And then I look at somebody in the United States or Canada that I'm equally working with, and they're doing nothing. And it's like, you speak the language, you went to school here, you got a million contacts. Why is this guy over here who just got off the boat, why is he killing it? And why are you struggling? Okay. Why is that? Because the guy got off the boat, knows he's working at a deficit. The guy who's born here in Dallas, Texas, went to school here, knows everybody, walks in the local restaurant. Hey, Joe, how are you? He just takes it all for granted. Okay. Both parties need to work on themselves constantly. That's the message to your question is we've got to always work on ourselves. Like I said, at 60, I'll be 64 next month. I'm working on me as hard today as I did, when I was, 42 years ago, graduating college, just kind of figuring out, how am I going to make enough money to buy beer this weekend? I mean, literally, that's kind of where I was at that point in my life at 20 years old, and, you got to work on yourself. And then what happens is you kind of become that beacon or that light for other people. They want to be like you. They don't want to be you, but they want to be like you. And they say, well, how did you get where you are? And then you can share with them some of the ways that you can get there. Once again, if they'll do the work, you can't do it for them. And you know this as a trainer, right? You can't pay somebody to do your push-ups. I don't care if you're Elon Musk. You can't pay somebody else to do your push-ups. They're going to get the benefit. You're not. They got to do the work themselves to learn the process, figure out the process of whatever it is that they're trying to do in their life.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. I like that. And that's the way I lead too, is you have to fill your own cup so that you can pour over onto others, because you can't help others unless you're able to help yourself.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're in your own grave that you can't get out of because you're looking up and can't figure out how to solve your own problem, let alone trying to help other people solve their problems.
Well, there's a personal trainer that I listen to in New Jersey. He's an Israeli guy, and now I'm forgetting his name. I even got his podcast on my phone. Um, but he has a great thing. He says, who wants to have a weak father? And I'll give you a fast one on that. Okay. 9/11 when it happened. Okay. Jeremy Glick was one of my teammates as a judo player. We trained in the same facility in New Jersey. He was a few years younger than me. I don't know what happened on that plane over Pennsylvania. We'll never really know. Okay. But here's what I know. I know how strong Jeremy was. Whatever those guys were intending to do, were they going to fly it in a 3 Mile Island and blow up the whole East Coast, right, with a failed nuclear reactor? Were they going to fly it into the White House and cause more calamity? Whatever it was, I know Jeremy and the other guys on that plane that joined them, there was a rugby player and a couple others. And Jeremy was a dad at the time. I don't know what the other guys were or weren't, but it was really important for America to have strong men. I mean, physiologically strong men and strong attitude. And they probably all realized they were going to die, that wasn't going to turn out well. But they did that for other people. And that's what we have to be to other people. We have to be strength, not weakness. And I don't mean just in the weight room, I mean in general. People have to look and go, wow, I get strength from that guy. I get strength from that woman. I get strength from that individual. That's what people are looking for. The days of weakness have ended in America. We're looking for strength, right or wrong. Reagan used to say, strong and wrong is better than weak and right. And I believe that. Okay. I'm not always right. Believe me. In my house, I'm not always right. In my business, I'm not always right. I don't always do the right thing. But one thing you'll get from me is strength. I'm not going to do it from a position of weakness. I'm only going to come from a position of strength. And I think that strength is what people are looking for, not only here in the United States, but around the world. People are looking for strong people to help lead them and guide them for them to become stronger. Not for you to do all the heavy lifting for them, but for them to become stronger. I think it's really important.
Yeah, that's a great perspective for sure. And that's typically what it is. If you're in a place where you're not looking for that help, then I guess you get to accept the place that you're in because it's not going to change if you don't reach out for the help that you need.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's my big platform and encouragement is telling people you're not stuck. You might feel like you're stuck. Your situation might be down at rock bottom, but you're never stuck.
Exactly. You can always do something.
Yep. Very cool perspective. Real quick, rapid fire. What would be three tips you would give somebody who wants to start a business from nothing? Maybe they're trying to transition out of law enforcement or another career. Maybe they just have an idea, want to start a side hustle, turn it into a business. What would be your first three tips for somebody like that?
Real easy. First thing is put it on paper. Okay, when you put it on paper, it connects to the mind. There's some kind of invisible thing that happens where it connects with the mind. Okay, so it manifests itself when you put it on paper. Number two, just start. Don't be putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Just start, whatever it is, just start. Baby steps are okay. Third thing, okay, remember this statement: day at a time, brick at a time, process by process. Every great business is built that way. No business becomes successful overnight. I personally didn't become successful overnight. Some of the companies and brands that I've worked with that have become household words didn't become that overnight. Took years and years and years of product development and hits and misses. So once again, day at a time, brick at a time, process by process. Same way with personal training, right? Somebody walks in, they're 50 pounds overweight, they haven't been in the gym in 20 years. Well, I'm going to get on a treadmill and run for 4 hours. No, you're not. Because I'll never see you again. Right? It's the same thing. So those would be my three steps.
Cool. I like it. I agree. I get so much pushback when people, I mean, I'm part of a group that there's a guy who transitioned out of law enforcement and started his own it's like a house cleaning type business in Ohio. And he's trying to help encourage other law enforcement and first responders to start a business just to either transition out or something for some side hustle, cash, whatever, what have you. And people don't believe you when you just say, just do it. Like,
Exactly.
just start. You just gotta get up and go do it. Like, there's
Exactly.
literally no other way to put it. Like, you could be be terrified, be scared, and think the worst of the world. But if you kind of just got it, that's my story. I jumped and figured out how to fly on the way down because I had to get out of a toxic work environment at the time that was killing my mental and physical health,
There you go.
and out of that came my business and now my future. So,
Beautiful.
uh,
Beautiful.
pain into purpose, right?
Yep. Yep.
One more question for you, some quick hit tips here, because we did talk about financial things, and I'd love to give people some financial tips or help. What would be your first three financial tips that everyone needs to know?
One, pay yourself first. Really important. Okay. You're going to pay a lot of taxes. You're going to pay a lot of expenses. Learn to pay yourself first. If you're self-employed like I am, okay, get yourself a SEP retirement account. Okay. Start to fund it. You can fund it for very little money. Okay. But do it in a disciplined way where every month you put away money. You do that, you'll accumulate interest and dividends every single year. That's number one. Okay. Number two, financially. Okay. Pay off the highest credit card debt that you have first. Be a credit card, be it a car loan, whatever the highest interest rate is, you got to attack that. Okay. Third thing, okay, learn a little bit about home economics. What can you fix in your house? Okay. If you have an old sweater and needs a button, figure out how to get that button back on or don't go buy a new sweater. Okay. There's a lot of stuff we can use and reuse. Okay. You don't need a new car. No reason to buy a new car, for example. Okay. Plenty of good used cars out there that you can buy, save yourself a bunch of money. If it's an expensive car, you save yourself the extra tax. All right. The Millionaire Next Door is one of the best books ever written, frankly, because it takes average people and it shows average people who make wealth. Okay. Don't let people fake you out because they're living in the biggest house, driving the fanciest car. A lot of time they're broke. Take the guy who's living in the middle. He's probably got money in the bank.
Yeah, that's one I've not heard of learning home ec. I like that, and that's a great thing. People throw stuff out all the time and go buy new, and half the time I get frustrated sometimes when my husband and I bicker because he can't find something. I'm like, if you put it away where it goes, you'll find what you need. You won't be buying a duplicate of something we already have
Exactly.
and can't
Exactly.
find.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, goodness. John, this has been a great conversation. You're a wealth of knowledge. I'm sure we could sit here and record probably 5, 10 hours of education to help other people, but that's why you have books and and podcasts and mediums, so we can take your own advice and go listen to more of you on your other platforms.
Great. Well, John underscore Solleder is my YouTube. And you're welcome. We've got about 200 episodes on there. And I want to get you not only interviewed, but we want to get your book on there too. We'll do some interviews on that. So I'll email you back this afternoon. Okay. And then I'll send you my address. You can send me a book so I can read it
Yeah.
and take notes. And then let's do some interviews on that as well. But I
Yeah.
appreciate the invitation today. You're doing a wonderful job and continued great success.
Thank you. I appreciate it. To wrap this up for y'all, his definition of thriving is taking care of himself because, like we said, we rise by lifting others, but first we must lift ourselves. He continuously invests in himself and his mental, physical, personal, spiritual health, things like that, so that he can be the best that he can be. I think you have many examples of being one decision away from a totally different life. I think that Reagan story that you shared was pretty pivotal as far as your whole startup story and how you got started. Of just one perspective lit that fire in you to get up and do something, which is really cool. It only takes one to change your trajectory. So very, very cool. For anyone else listening to Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line podcast, I'd love to hear your comments, feedback. Please like and subscribe. Share this episode for somebody who might need it, who might benefit from it. And as always, hang out for me, John. For the rest of you, stay safe out there. I'll see you next time.